Inconsistent.
So why do you think that
they
that
attack
level
themselves
of
the
hate
most?
developed within the black community?
I don't think it's that level of it. I just think it's an out. What's the word I'm looking for? Like it's a reaction to their environment. You know, I think that
You think it's just inward? You think it's in their nature because they're darker skinned?
No. I just think that the environment they're in,
Is that what you're
the
implying?
situation that they're in, has put them into position to attack each other.
Okay, so systematically, the system they were put in.
No, I don't think the system put anybody in that. I think they did it themselves.
So you think they put themselves in those positions of slavery, like being here in America, and then
Are you
know what
are
I'm
you saying they
Like
should go back to
having
Africa? Because I agree with you.
No. I'm saying that
It sounds like that's what you're saying.
I think that there is almost like a, you know how you have like one-on-one therapy?
Yeah.
I think there has to be therapy, almost like, for both sides, white and black, for different reasons. I think, because there's I don't know how I would put this, almost like on a macro scale.
Like individual?
Yeah, like how we have, it's weird, it's crazy, but we kind of do it right already with propaganda, right? With like our TV, our television programming, right? But the problem is we're now facing a huge, reality where the Democrat Party, for example, kind of really overcame the plans of the Republican Party and are setting, people of color further back. And then look, now we got Trump back in office, and now we're able to move a little more forward. But then the Democrat Party is like, no, we're the ones helping you. You come back to us. And then they are like, they said they're helping us. Oh, we got to vote for them. And then because they don't know who to vote for. They're lost. It's like everybody's lost people. You got Puerto Ricans, blacks, they don't know who to vote for. They were all slaves for so long. They have no, you know what I mean? Like
Speak
nowhere
for
to
yourself.
turn.
I was never a slave.
No, I'm talking about, so like, for example, the mentality, it's like a learned behaviors, passed down learned behaviors, right? Like, so for ex-slaves, right, the way they were treating their kids to behave in society and things, because they themselves really had no comprehension of how to behave in society, right?
So that's why they act like this today, you saying?
So it's like passed down behaviors, yeah, like
So you're saying they act out because they were never taught to be civilized?
Correct. So like, for example, how like white people, we always be like, yo, you see how they just let their kid get away with that?
Yeah.
I would never talk to my mama like that, because she would beat the living shit out of me. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's slave learned behavior. That's ex-slave mannerism. That's you know what I'm saying?
Beating the shit out of your kid is ex-slave behavior?
Yeah, for sure, 1000%. The masters would never have done those things. They never treated their kids like dogs. They would treat them like they're their kids. I grew up in a violent environment where my family, the grown-ups were all violent. The pastors.
Yeah, but see, I don't see that as learned behavior. I see that as emotional immaturity.
Well, it's very immature, because you got to understand, catching up to what the reality of society was amongst whites, right, is totally different than that lived of the slaves and their children, right? Because their children try, they enter society and they try to be as, those around them, and try to be civil and, but, you got to understand, their parents, right, who were the slave at the time, they never experienced civilization. They only experienced what was on the field or in the house, or whatever work they were put to do.
Yeah, but
So
at
you
what
got
point do we
Puerto
say,
Ricans and black,
hey, it's been long enough. You should have figured this out by now.
you should have figured it out, right? And that's the problem. Every time there's like, we see times in history where they are, almost figuring it out, and what happens? We look at the Tulsa bombings. We look at just many different scenarios throughout the U.S. that show how we were pretty much kept back, like from progression.
And then, do you think they could ever get to that point again?
So that's the thing. I mean, we are kind of we are moving in the right direction, but right, we have unfortunately opposing parties, right? Two parties who oppose each other.
How long does it take though for people to be like, hey, let's do better for ourselves? How many generations do you think that would take?
Right, but what is better? What is that to them, right? It's like now defining, who you're, or rather, like how you're gonna,
Yeah, but
like,
I mean, we're in America. Better is clearly financially.
Right. So
yeah,
that's what
I mean,
I'm saying.
that would be my argument. In America, when we say better, we mean money.
We mean money, right?
Yeah, we mean how do we get ourselves out of this situation?
So it's crazy because look at P. Diddy, right? He was a billionaire, but look at where he's at. He had money, so money clearly isn't the answer, right?
Well, I mean,
I would argue.
Well, if you're gonna be a sexual deviant, that's.
I mean, right? To him, that was normal. His father was, friends with Frank Lucas and, and all these mobsters, and like that was his. That's the mentality he was.
But why
down.
didn't Diddy say, "I'm not gonna be like that"? Why didn't Diddy say, "I'm gonna break this chain. I'm not doing this"?
Who knows? Maybe he tried. Unfortunately, we have generational.
You tried.
Uh-huh.
How come you're not in jail?
For me personally, right? It's like I can speak only on my own, right? I can only speak for myself when it comes to why I overcame. But when I look at, let's say, the majority of the people in my family, right, who haven't overcame, right, I could only now go off patterns, right?
Uh-huh.
Patterns that I see. So, right, drugs, alcohol, blah, 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 abuse, etc., right? But now, looking at my situation, see, it's different because I can only speak for myself. Me, I did, my own research and became who I wanted to be.
But why can't everybody else do that?
Well, because some people, they don't like to read, for number one, right? They're not taught the importance of education.
So who taught you?
Who taught me?
Who taught you the importance of education?
So for me, it was like, now we're going, like I said, going to my life, right? Because I'm going to show you the difference between me and other people in this reality of color, right? So like, for example, me, my parents, I was the generation where my parents were never home, right? I was always outside, able to do and go wherever I pleased at whatever hours I wanted, right? And my other family members, right? They were with their kids, they had 2-parent home, right? But the problem is they still, what happened? You still have abusive situations that were going on with the mother and the father and the kids and still living, right? So they never almost like were able to break out of that mentality of the pattern that goes on in that family. You get what I mean? so me separating myself, I was able to see outside that box.
What I'm saying is this. This is the real only thing I'm trying to get at. Why is it that some people could get out and others don't?
Because some people are trapped in the box.
And not only that, it's some people want to get out. Some people just don't want to get out. They're happy there.
Some people want to get out and don't know how to get out. What out it is what even is out, right? They don't even know what even is out. But that's
I know what's out.
So I'm saying I know what out is.
Well, because look at what me and Jose all have in common. We all have in common. Look,
very tinge of homosexuality. A slight tinge.
We were all able to be out and about, right? We were all able to be out and about and see the world for what it is, not just be stuck. Like I was, I would say, when my mom and dad were together, right? I was a little kid, right? I was a little kid but when they separated, I was still like 5? I was 5 years old when my family separated, right? So I got an older brother who's 8 years older than me, right? Who basically experienced life with my mom and my dad, right? And this goes, I'm gonna show you what I mean. This is the most relevant to the conversation, right? Because you got my mom and my dad who got to raise my brother and sister, who were 6 and 8 years older than me, right? The way they turned out, think about it. So I'm 5 years old, right? My older brother, he would have been 13 when my parents separated. My sister would have been, right? Like, it's been a minute of saying how old everybody is. 11. Just get to it. It's been a minute, right? But I'm saying,
hold on, we're writing this out. How old was?
I'm trying to give you like the timeline of what it was to be raised with parents versus me, who at 5 years old then became not being raised with parents and able to do what I could please, and you know what I'm saying.
But I think most people in the quote unquote hood are outside all day.
What are you trying to convince him of?
No, I'm not trying to convince him of anything. I'm asking him, why is it that some people get out and others don't? And my opinion is that these people are emotionally immature and can't make decisions properly. It has nothing to do with racism or this or that. I think that's.
And what you're saying is that their ignorance.
I'm explaining rather the emotional immaturity and where it stems from. Why some people remain emotionally immature. And people like us, for example, who don't give a shit anymore, because now there's, like, for example, there's no joke somebody could say to me or you guys that is gonna really make us want to freaking
punch him in the face,
kill, do drugs,
like that reporter that got punched in the face.
Yeah.
So you went from saying that my outfit was really cute to saying I'm an effing idiot. That's so mean.
But I think that your point of view is very obstructed, and I think that you just don't understand the magnitude of having a child.
Yeah, well, I'm not the one who admitted they would be okay with killing babies in foster care and killing children that have been abused.
That's not the point. What I'm saying.
That's really.
Oh my
right?
God,
yo, every time I see them, I'm like, why would you? What happened was you ever seen the Dave Chappelle skit when he's talking about oil? When the reporter said, are you in Iraq because of oil? He's like, oil? Who said anything about oil? And he smacks the water and runs away.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what she did. She got caught in the corner. She punched him in the face and ran away. She didn't know what to do. She was emotionally immature. She couldn't think her way out of it.
I hear your argument.
She punched that lady's glasses into her face.
Yeah, she gave her stitches.
That was crazy.
That's the abortion conversation you're talking about?
Yeah. You seen that one?
We've all seen it.
All right.
Beautiful.
We're gonna see it next episode.
So your argument is they're emotionally immature. Great. His argument is this is why they're emotionally immature. Because, correct me if I'm wrong, because of the systems that they were thrown into involuntarily, which we refer to now as systemic racism.
He refers. I don't refer to it.
He refers to
because I see white people in the hood.
Okay.
And I know I can't blame racism on
that. So over time, right? And this is what's crazy about that. What you're mentioning is white people in the hood. I'm a 90s kid.
In fact, the project started with white people.
Right. I'm only in my 30s, right?
Black people gentrified it.
But what's crazy is I'm in my 30s, right? I'm in my 30s, and I remember a time when there was absolutely not a single white person in the hood. You were either Puerto Rican or black.
Yeah.
And a few Mexicans here, maybe one or two Mexican families, few Dominicans, I remember, right?
And there's people 2 generations before you that can say, I was in the hood and I never saw a black person in the hood.
In the hood?
Yeah.
Which hood?
The same projects that you
Like,
see full of black
'cause
people.
We're talking about Gowanus.
I could talk about any projects. Projects started with white people. They didn't call them projects. They called them something else.
You're talking about back in the boomer days, yeah.
Yeah.
So if you go back to the boomer
And
days,
then little by
right,
little, black people moved in. They were like, I'm out of here. I can't, these people don't know how to act.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? That's what happened.
And it became
The white people,
a lot of them.
white people like, they don't know how to act. We got to go.
Yeah.
We can't be here. So my thing is, why don't they know how to act still? 3 generations later, still we're in the same problem.
Right.
Why
So
can't
that's
we
what
get
I'm
ourselves out of
explaining.
here?
The generations, right? So that generation that moved into the projects, right, for the first time, that was during the pre-civil rights era, right? So that was the era that just came out of slavery. What is it called? They were under the
Jim Crow.
Jim Crow.
laws,
I was gonna, yeah.
right? They were under the Jim Crow laws. So these people, all they understand, right, is what their slave parents, their ex-slave parents taught them, right? And
Yeah, I know. I
parents,
understand what you're saying. But what I'm saying is this.
I'm just saying,
what you're implying is
that
that they learned from their parents and they taught that down, right? What I'm saying
basically,
is
if we follow
we
the
have the same
timeline, we could
situation,
really
but we got
diagnose.
out of it.
Well, that's what I'm trying to explain here. So if we analyze the timeline, right, we can break down the majority of colored people, right? But us, the very few, right, who managed to overcome these obstacles and understand society in a different way than our, people who are still, mentally, emotionally immature, right? It's different for us because we were able to see the world, and which allowed us to then study the world in a way that they could not, because all they know is their world that they're in, right?
Why can't they?
Is basically like the houses that they're in, like the household. Like, I know so many people who don't even know how to get a job, who don't have a resume, who don't
That was
have
me.
a GED.
There was a point I had no idea how to make a resume.
Yeah.
And I figured it out.
Right, but we
Idiot.
thugged it out, right? We were analyzing the world. We were getting into our foot into places that these people, like my family, would not know how to get their feet into at all.
Yeah. I mean, remember, we grew up at the time that it was a time where we had to walk into places. Be like, can I get a job, please? There was no internet, right? And then there was a transition period where that's all we did was internet. And if you were to walk into with a resume, people look at you like crazy. Oh, fill it up online.
Excuse me, sir. What are you doing?
Yeah, fill it out online. I'm like, what are you talking? What's online? What is that?
Yeah.
But we figured it out. We like, we're gonna commit ourselves. What's the difference between that and people that are like, nah, I'm gonna sell drugs until I die? I could have did that.
So, yeah,
That's easy.
Aren't you doing that wrong?
No, not me. Don't
me.
Don't put that on me. I'm out of that.
I went from freaking.
I think everybody here sold drugs at one point. In fact,
went
some
from
people
selling
still
I
are
went from
freaking
selling-
trying. Some people are
I
still
went
drug
from
dealers
selling-
here.
That's you.
Not me.
I'm trying to be like you.
I went from selling pounds to policies.
What I'm saying is, why don't people say, hey, enough is enough. I'm sick of seeing people die, get robbed. I'm sick of that. I
All
want to
right.
get out of it.
Let me get in here. 'Cause
Wait,
you
let me
guys
just say one thing.
idiots.
When I moved to Staten Island, there was a point where I had an option to move to freaking Stapleton projects.
You did, right?
Yeah. And I thought,
So you could only speak for yourself. Do you have a family member who grew up almost in the same household but stood behind while you went forward, and they're doing much lesser than you are?
no. 'cause
Yeah,
we
it's
talked
called
about
nah, 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 nah.
No, because I was like, what the hell are we doing here? Right? We talked about it. What the hell are we doing here? My sister was one that was going down the wrong path. Me and my aunt pulled her to the side and was like, yo, you got to get your shit together. Go to school. Get rid of this guy. He's a piece of crap. Da-da-da. You know what? She's a nurse now. She changed her whole life. She's making more money than me.
Yeah.
But we took the opportunity to talk to her. Hey, you gotta get out of here.
I did it.
You don't see this.
Nobody in my family. Nah, I'm
You
just.
No, what I'm saying is that
I wanted to make sure I was the best.
you're like, I'm drowning. I gotta push people out the way.
I was me.
Push their head down so I can get out. Yeah. Check crabs in the barrel. But I was like, bro, we gotta do something. We're all dying over here. What are we doing?
Right, because so you see and understand then it is in fact crabs in a barrel, right?
Yeah.
In societies of color, right? Because when we look at, our current situations, right? It's like, once somebody finds their way out, it's like, oh, I gotta tell everybody about this.
I wasn't even out. I was trying to get out too. We were all I was trying to figure it out, but I was like, this isn't the way. What we're doing right now is not working.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. You see how much time it took for you as a person, right?
Yeah,
individually.
It took a hell of a long time.
Now understand.
It took too long.
Right.
That's
it took
my
too long, right?
my opinion.
And
it took forever.
For you to get out?
Yeah,
exactly.
it took too long.
Yeah.
I should have been. What I'm doing right now, I should have did 10 years ago.
You know what I'm saying?
But
same
what
here.
I did was I was like, I'm not gonna let my son go through this. I'm gonna set him up right out of high school. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So that way he got the head start I wish I would have got.
All right. So now that you guys have both spoken a lot, take a breath. There you go. So let's. I know I'm in a room full of Christians. So let's pretend cavemen happened, right? Let's pretend that we're.
Which one? Adam?
Yeah.
Cain?
Let's say that
Cain's wife.
Right.
Let's say that.
Neanderthal.
Do we want to go through the Canaanite lineage or the Seth lineage?
Let's pretend that they're cavemen, right?
All right.
Systemic ism has been going on forever. Since back then.
Yeah.
Think about that process. It wasn't a matter of who was what color from what race. It became those things as we progress. But it's always been about I want over you. Me, my tribe, me, my family, me, my peoples over you.
Yeah.
So that's been a thing forever and ever and ever. And then you've seen it. It could be very, like you were saying earlier, it could be that in the next 300 years, it's the blacks that are
the blacks.
The blacks with the hard the. It could be the blacks that are the
Capital
ones that
R.
are the minorities or the majorities, the minorities, that become the white people, and the white people become the oppressed and are crying out systemic racism. It could be that. It might as well end up that way.
Well, so that's why I try to use the timeline, because once you use the timeline, it kind of cuts out political argument, right? Because political argument kind of pushes a people one way. It's everything is said for.
Wait. We just agreed that what I had said from the caveman age that's always been. You just agreed. Wouldn't you agree that that's always been the case? That there's always been
my people before your people.
My people, my tribe, my family since the beginning. Since the oola.
That's how his people talked.
We didn't survive too long.
My people had a language.
We're coming back now.
That's why I asked, well, are you talking about the Seth lineage or the Canaanite lineage?
Yeah, he's a Canaanite.
You see?
He's a clear Canaanite, bro.
He has the mark.
I was trying to make it
the mark.
I was trying to make it very, very simplistic for you. You want to dive into a political or geographical or a cultural specific time period or place. I'm just saying that it's in our nature to always want to overcome or be better than one another.
So then why don't people do it?
Because I think that people don't do it because they're given first of all, they're given the option to do it. The fact that they don't do it is because they truly don't want to.
Yeah.
So
that's what I'm saying. Yeah, they don't want to. That's my thought. They don't want to. But why not?
Can I explain why?
It's on the table.
I feel like
it's on the table.
Why? The only thing that can answer
before
why.
you go into the why, you have to understand that the drive isn't there. So we've seen this. We have billionaires that have it all and end up on a rope.
Okay, but now let me say, because so even from the beginning when we use that argument, the problem is we're all inherently evil. We all inherently want to sin, right? We all inherently, look at a woman with lust and brother with greed, right? The problem is that. So every time somebody does good, right, you got a hater. You got a, you know what I'm saying? And that's the problem. The haters.
And people. It's like that in the. I don't know if you ever went to an actual gym and you have like a gym rival.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that. It's like, oh, you can lift that much. Oh, I gotta lift more than him.
Yeah.
It's
so
that,
so
I
Jesus
gotta do better than him. I want to try.
exactly.
Harder.
But if that's
And-
so.
and-
so
and
before you add systemic racism.
No.
Before
Wait.
you add poverty.
I wanna-
before you add education.
It all
Before
boils
you
down to
add
what I just said.
It
Exactly.
all boils down to it's the individual what they want from life.
Yeah. Exactly.
You know what I mean? If you don't want it, you don't want it. People
Right.
now let's throw in all those other things. Forget it. They might as well just hang up.
Yeah. But what I'm
Right.
saying, I see people getting out all the time, getting out the mud.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, I don't know if you remember we used to say that in church.
Getting out the money.
Getting out the mud.
Stuck in
Remember
the
that,
mud.
Mike? Getting out the mud.
Yeah.
So you got to get out the mud. We've been talking about it forever.
Yeah, because we were quoting a psalm about being that was talking about being stuck in the mud.
Yeah.
You
So
know, and immediately we saw ourselves, because we felt stuck in the mud systematically, almost like there was no. It was just the situation we were born into, right?
Yep.
So that's really what we're talking about here is the situations we have no control over, right? Basically what our destiny is set, right? Our destiny is set from
I think
birth.
that's my. I mean, not to get political, but this is my thoughts on different ideologies. It's like you're focused on what you can't change versus what you can. It's if I can't change something, why am I dwelling on this? I can't change it. It's my past. It's what I'm stuck in. But I could do this. I could figure out how to get out. I could take this test.
The other problem I have
could
with
get
the
this
whole
job.
to go specifically to the systemic racism or systemic whatever ideology, the problem I have with that is that I allow that to infest my brain and to limit myself. I'm allowing these words to affect me. I'm allowing. It could be true that I walk into the store and that store owner looks at me like, he black.
He's gonna rob. He's gonna steal.
He's going to steal something.
So you know what you could do? Don't steal anything.
Or not care what they think.
That's another
and
one.
keep
Okay.
moving about my business. If I let that energy, I'm going to use energy for the
Here we go. It goes
naturalist,
his
and the science.
He has crystals.
So well, that's what I was explaining is that was the whole reason behind Christ was he separated
Here
the
we go.
people who are inherently
I was
filled with
trying to do
hate,
crystals.
right? But understand, it's a very important time in history because it really separates the people with hate in their heart.
He left
and
those
who
in Africa. And what else?
Yeah, because Jesus basically exposed us, right? He
left the ones
basically
full of hate in
exposed us.
Africa. He brought the rest of them to Europe.
Yeah, so right, but Jesus, his message was basically, it's literally about people needing to turn away from that inherent hate, right? And that
Well, maybe not. Maybe hate drives you.
well,
Just like the guy in the
remember,
gym. You're like, I hate
right?
that.
He said
he looks so good.
Well,
I wanna
remember
work out.
when he said that the two greatest
get his phone
commandments,
number.
when Jesus
I know,
was
it's such
asked
a
about
hate
the
to
two
love.
great, right? When Jesus was asked about the greatest commandment, he said the first. There's actually two, right? He goes, the first one is love the Lord your God with all your mind, heart, body, soul, and strength, right? Love the Lord your God, right? And then he said the second one is like this. He said it's love your neighbor as you love yourself, right? So he says on these two commandments rest the whole law, right? It puts the whole law to rest. And he says it almost on a Sabbath, and that's why we see he says, rest on me, for I am the Sabbath, right? So, and then we see Paul talk about don't let anybody tell you about, a certain day on the Sabbath, because us resting in Christ, we rest on him every day. Every day is the Sabbath, right? As long as we live in love, we're resting in Christ. Jesus.
Well, for somebody who
So-
doesn't go to church, you sound like you're on the pulpit right now, buddy.
Well, I say that because it really does explain what happened historically, right? Historically, we see if we stem from Christ and move forward, the world is just it's a constant war, a battle. The Bible says it's not a battle between flesh and blood, but of powers and principalities and authorities. Because, in fact, that's what it is.
All right, let me ask you a question. Let's say
dealing with
Jesus doesn't
authorities
come.
and powers and principalities who
What does that have to
either
do with
love
something?
you or they hate you.
Listen, Linda. Let's say Jesus doesn't come until 40,000 years from now. Whoa. Yeah.
There's no way because Donald Trump's the Antichrist
Never know.
until the next president, and then he's the Antichrist.
Right. Pass the
Exactly.
torch.
We're
No,
gonna
but
keep doing
let's say Christ, because I know we're dealing with Christians here. I apologize to the audience that don't believe in that. Let's say 40,000 years from now. Where do you think we are as a species? Is there still systemic racism?
Yeah.
Yes,
But
he said that's so
it's interplanetary instead of just countries.
interplanetary.
Yeah, we're gonna hate the people that grew up on Mars because they're taller, slimmer, because they have less
So
gravity
this is
over there.
assuming
wait,
Christ
but-
doesn't come back, right? And
No,
we're
he's
here
coming back.
He's coming back.
He's coming back. He's coming back. I don't want you to cry.
Yeah.
He's coming back.
No.
But
Besides that,
he's
I'm
coming
saying-
back 40,000 years from now. Which
So
is
far away.
from now,
so
right?
far.
Mhm.
Based on what we've done in the last 150
2,000.
years.
2,000 years. It's been the same thing going on.
No. Just let's keep it simple. 150 years. 150 years.
America.
Not just America, but the globe. But specifically, yeah, let's do
Right.
America. Keep it
America's
simple.
Our- our heart
250
goes out to
years
America.
old.
So
it's
just
even-
150,
It's too old for this conversation.
right? Technology.
We're still here.
Everyone can vote.
Everyone.
Everyone can vote.
Fortunately or unfortunately.
Kids are not put to work.
Not illegals anymore.
Not illegals. So in the short amount of time, the 150 years in American history, what would America look like if their ideology, us as a species, look like in 40,000 years?
There's no way to tell. So much things can happen. There could be a
Would-
nuclear war and change everything.
But okay, but assume we still survive.
We're gonna be linked with the AI, robotic bodies.
Like
No,
I said, I think
you-
we've
I
been
get
doing this
that.
thing
I
where
think that when we
constant
will-
clashes
Yeah.
until Christ returns.
I think that what happens
No
is
matter
that
how long that takes.
I think that we have that, but I think we have much less of that.
Yeah,
You got to
it's gonna
understand,
be-
there's going to
I'm
be a
pure
constant
human.
battle. There's
Not one of
always
these
going to be a
freaking
constant
robots.
battle between love and hate.
There's gonna be a lot of that.
No,
It's
I
love
honestly,
and hate.
The
It's
circumcised
literally
and
what
the
it boils down
uncircumcised.
to.
Listen, I don't know.
Not so
I don't even know
separate.
what's happening right now.
right. What I
Where are we right now?
what I
We were just
believe
talking
is,
about
what I
why
believe is
people
going to
believe
happen.
this.
It would be more enlightenment. I think that we'll get to a point where
I don't
yeah,
think so.
there'll
Yeah.
still be that ingrained nature, that selfish,
Yeah.
prideful,
If
that
so,
that
if that was the
sinful,
case,
whatever
Jose,
you want to label it. But I
If that
do
was the
think
case,
that
we-
we do become way better at dealing with one another.
so if
It's not-
that was the case, right? Prior
Yeah.
to Christ, we should have found that
Prior to
as a society.
Christ,
In other words, we didn't need a Christ.
There was.
You know what I'm saying? If we can solve
That's-
world hate,
I don't think there was
Right?
ever a point. I don't know. I don't
Yeah,
think
there was never
a
a point
before
of-
Christ.
what did you say?
no, that wasn't my argument. What I'm saying is that based on the last 150 years, just America, the way we've been acting to each other, when you compare that date till today, it's vastly different.
Vastly.
Immensely different. Forget about technology
What do you
and all this
find
other.
different? What do you find different?
Let's see. White people are not hanging black people up on trees.
As much.
That didn't happen. That didn't happen 150 years ago.
No.
150 years ago,
It did happen.
it was. 150 years ago was slavery, right?
Yeah. They were hanging.
Slavery was occurring.
Yeah.
They were working on the problem. Oh, I guess yeah. When they were getting caught for trying to run away,
Right,
that was it, but-
in 150
What,
Yeah.
that's probably what happened. That's a good
That's probably
explanation of what happened.
I think that's
The
that's what
ones that wanted change got killed.
Yeah.
And the ones
Exactly.
that didn't want change didn't get. And they just reproduced and made these weak
right.
If he had that, there will
Yeah.
still change.
Well,
Change
well,
still
Jesus
happens.
by the
said-
white people.
Well, Jesus himself said, just as they killed him, he goes, and they're gonna come after us. He goes, it's not because it's because they hated God first. Anybody who's looking for love and change, and the world of hate doesn't like that, and they're gonna want to kill, steal, and destroy.
So let me ask you a question. What would you tell a 16-year-old young man that is Puerto Rican or black?
I'll tell him, I'll talk to you in 16 years, and then tell me, what changed.
would you preach about systemic and how he has all these obstacles in his life? Would you teach him about how society is against him?
I mean, I have to. It's a conversation that every colored person has to have with their kid. When they step outside and into the world, cops see us differently. We see that still relevant, right? Because during the stop and frisk era, in our generation, we heard Commissioner Ray Kelly on audio say to stop only the blacks and Hispanics and leave the whites and Asians alone.
And crime rate plummeted.
Crime rate plummeted because we lived in
We were arresting the
fear.
criminals.
Or was it criminals being arrested, or did a lot of people move away? And was it criminals, or was it crime going on, real crime, or a lot of police framing people of color and calling it crime?
I think it's a little bit of each, but I think mostly people that got
You get
caught
what I'm
with
saying?
something.
So it's easy to it's easier kind of to say that, right? Because how is it a 14% is committing 50% of the crime? Clearly they're letting white people go.
Actually, it's
Clearly
less.
they're saying
It's less than that. A study came out that it
What
said out of that 13%, only actually 6% are committing 50% of the crime.
Wow.
So half are just chilling. They're just living their lives, being regular old folk,
Old folk?
right.
like the rest of us. And only
Well, that's what I'm
6%
trying
are
to
actually
say
committing
is-
50%. That's a crazy.
Yeah, to say, right? So half of them are committing the crimes, right? Supposedly,
Allegedly.
right? But
Wait, what?
when it
No,
comes
half
to
of them
the,
are chilling. I thought half of them were chilling.
Half of them are chilling. They're just trying to be.
No, half of them are chilling. The other half committing crime. This is what we're talking about. The ones committing crime, right?
Okay.
A lot of them, right? How many stories do we hear about people coming out of jail of color because they were exonerated? Because of clearly it was a false claim.
You just proving
or
my
they
argument
were-
further and further. Yes, that used to happen. Imagine when the laws didn't exist
Used to, it
50
still
years
happens.
ago.
And I would argue that it happens in white people too. It's not just black people that happens to.
That's what I'm
White
saying.
people
we're,
get accused
we're
of
going in the
crimes
right
that they
direction.
didn't do.
We're gonna be a
So
more
white
peaceful.
people do get accused. I'm not saying they don't go to jail and things like that. There's a lot of white people in jail. They're 60% of our population. They're gonna be accused. They're gonna go to jail, right? I mean, but the problem is are they gonna put all of their criminals in jail?
I hope so.
No, they're not. That's
You think
not
they're
what's
gonna-
happening right
You think they're gonna let their criminals just walk around?
Historically, yeah, that's what we see. We don't see as many.
They'll be like, hey,
Put it like this.
that's Martin. He's a murderer. Just avoid him.
Yeah.
No, they were gonna
seriously.
arrest him.
I
They're
mean,
gonna get him off the streets.
I mean, if that was the case, we would. I mean,
I would
we
arrest
wouldn't have-
Martin.
Right. So like this is what I'm saying. Like, look at our. Right. So we look at things from almost like a very small view because we're a small group of people. We're only 17% of the population in the Latino community, right?
I don't know about
The
that.
Latinos,
La.
right? The Latino.
We're actually
Black
less because most of them are
Right.
Mexican.
Bastard.
Exactly.
They're gonna be
So,
50%. The Mexicans.
Yeah.
They're doing it right.
And this is crazy though.
They just walk.
This
in.
is crazy.
Thanks, Biden.
I mean, well, now with the
Thanks,
deportations
Biden.
going on, who knows?
So switching gears real quickly. Anyone watching the And the reason why I mentioned this is because, again, I stick to my belief that we're headed to a better place as society. Yes, there's still going to be killings. Yeah, blah blah blah. Stop it. But if when I look at the last 150 years in America, I'm like, yeah, we're doing great.
We're on the right track.
Progress is being made.
We're on the right track.
Is it perfect? Can it be better? Sure.
Yeah, but don't hate the society because it's not perfect.
The only way it'll ever get
getting
better.
Don't throw away the baby with the bathwater.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying?
For me,
It's taking time. It's getting there.
For me, when it comes to the word better and getting better, the only way it'll get better, right? And we're seeing this relevant right now.
We're not
right?
sending them back to Africa, Mike. Don't say it.
No,
they have to stay here.
No, getting better in the sense like, look, we're going to be bringing the Bible back into schools, right?
Amen.
We're going to be
bring the Quran
the
back
way
in.
Trump is moving and talking about bringing.
Why can't we have the
God
Quran in school, Mike?
Because it goes against our systematic beliefs here in America.
I don't know what
the
you're talking
founding
about.
fathers.
I don't know. Half of them weren't even Christians.
So, right, in God we trust, right?
That got added recently.
Hold on. I'm going to explain. In God we trust is to say, right? To hear in God we trust, right? It goes against Sharia law. You understand? That's why we don't teach it here in America.
Great guess.
1957. Damn, sorry.
Say.
Very simple.
It was after
our grandparents remember a time when that wasn't on the money.
Right? So in God we trust goes against the Quran because they don't believe in Allah. They don't believe in God. They believe in Allah.
What are you talking about, bro? It's the same thing.
No, it's not the same thing.
Do Christians in Muslim that speak Arabic? Christians that speak Arabic, do they call God Allah?
I'll tell you what, Ayatollah, people who are not young and ignorant in their perspective, right? The people who are their teachers and things, they prefer not to say God. They prefer to say Allah.
I'm talking about Christian churches.
I understand.
Yeah. That speak Arabic. Do they call God Allah? Biblically, they're reading the Bible. Do they say Allah?
So biblically, we don't see Allah ever attributed to God until the 600s. When
that's not what I'm asking you. I'm asking you today. If you go to an Arabic country that speaks Arabic,
I'm trying to
and you go to a Christian church and you sit down and you're listening, are they going to say Allahu Akbar?
Yeshuahu Akbar.
No.
What was that?
You know how I know? Because I have a friend that's Egyptian. He goes every year to visit his family. He goes, the Christian churches say Allahu Akbar. They say it in the Christian church.
And it's interesting, right? Because we're
they're not
talking
blow
about a
themselves
different
up,
language.
But
the Arabic
it's just language.
They're not that committed.
But this is why it's got to be the God. One, once they go back in their history, in Arabic language history, they're going to see for themselves God of the Bible was never attributed with the word Allah.
So it's semantics. It's just words. So they can't say Jesus?
No, they can't. That's against they can say Jesus, but they can't say he's God. They say he's a prophet.
Somebody's getting raptured right now.
All right, guys. I'm going to try to hop back on, though.
All right. I love you, baby. Give me a big kiss.
Love you.
Give me a kiss. Who's that back there? Who is that?
Peace.
All right, I'll come back on. I'll try to rejoin.
All right, bet.
Who's that woman?
That's his daughter. He's picking up from school. You saw he got real stiff?
He's like,
He got so stiff. Right? You notice that? He's like,
Does that happen to you?
Me? No.
It's like when
know what it is?
When One World invites
That's what I was going to say.
Yes.
He talks to his daughter different. So I would talk like